And welcome to another informative episode of Homefront right here on TV6. My name is Rome, and with me today we have Dr. Paula Robertson once again, because the last time she was here we were discussing the adolescent brain and the effects of some of the drugs that are currently being used and how it affects the adolescent brain. So welcome again, Dr. Robertson. Now, the last time we spoke about lean, which you said sometimes make you lean.
It does.
Right.
And
it's popular with the hip-hop culture in the US, and now it's here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
We also spoke of the effects of marijuana on the adolescent brain, and as well we spoke about the vaping. Today, we want to dive a bit into alcohol, because that probably is one of the most common in terms of drugs. It is the most accessible. So tell us a bit about alcohol and how it affects the adolescent brain.
You know, one of the things we find in the pediatric emergency department, we've done a lot of outreach programs to a number of schools not just the East-West corridor, but mainly in the East-West corridor. And one of the things that the teachers tell us a lot is that they were seeing a number of issues with teens experimenting with alcohol because of the reasons you're saying. It's widely accessible and so on. And again, at its core, it's an attempt to kind of deal with issues in an unhealthy way. In the short term, alcohol can cause you to be really unwell. So if you overdo the alcohol, it can cause obviously things like coma. It affects your body's temperature control. So you can find that your body temperature drops, for instance. It causes your blood sugar to drop, so it can cause seizures and so on as well. So often when we find young people who are really intoxicated, we often need to watch their blood sugars, look at them for seizures, give them fluids and so on. It does require a significant period of monitoring. In the longer run, it's broken down by the liver, so it can actually cause liver injury and damage. And over time, it tends to affect the developing brain as well, because it affects things like coordination, learning and so on. And again, we know that kids and young people who get started on alcohol from an early age do tend to underperform and underachieve in the longer term. So it does have quite profound effects on developing
But
brain.
I would have never thought so, because I know that Trinidad and Tobago, especially, and Caribbean people as well, we have this thing where you would give a young person a drink and say, take some for the worms. And then it could evolve into, it's your birthday, so you take a drink. And then we're not sure what the effects would this be in the long run if the child, the teenager or the adolescent starts to pick it up as a habit. So I'm glad that you're touching on those things, because we didn't know that it would have long-term effects, especially in terms of them learning. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And the thing is, we know that teenagers want to experiment and try new things. That's part of growing up. It's all about having healthy relationships with these, though. So if it is, and you're thinking of using it as an escape to get out of what's happening in your life, that never solves the problem. You've got to face that problem head on, get help when you need it, because this escape route can cause long-term injury.
And not only that, I remember in the last episode where you were speaking about the adolescent mind and how vulnerable it is. You would see that it maybe might have, well, let me ask, does it have more long-term effects if an adolescent is exposed to continuous alcohol use versus if an adult?
Yeah, so there's something called, the scientific term is dendritic pruding, which is that what tends to happen is a lot of the drugs that we've been talking about cause injury to developing brain centers. And what then happens is that injury or damage affects new nerve cells being produced. So they are being developed in a more stunted manner, that it has therefore longer term effects in terms of how you're going to be learning in the future as well. So it's really important not just to think about the here and now, but what that effect is going to be on.
All right, we're jumping inside something that is unique to our culture. It's called Zessa pills. Now, I have never seen one. I heard it looks something like a Flintstone tablet.
It does. They're very colorful.
Colorful. Yeah. Tell me a bit about this and the effects.
So they can be a mixture of different things, but predominantly they're usually some form of amphetamine. So this is the family that includes ecstasy, NMDA, etc. Sometimes with cocaine as well. The amphetamine family basically are very potent stimulants. So what they will do in the short term is they'll raise things like your blood pressure, your heart rate. They'll make you feel really energized and high. But there's always a counterbalance. There's always a but. because of the fact that they're often formulated and prepared in the black market, off regulation, etc., the concentration of these chemicals is often unknown, and with really potent amounts it can cause some devastating effects. For instance, high doses of these have been known to cause strokes and heart attacks. Clots in young people, clots as well. So we've had young people come in with strokes, it's been reported, or with sudden heart attacks, for example. It can cause seizures. We know that it dissociates your ability to, remember we were talking about the higher brain centers, to make wise judgments. So often what's been reported in cases where there's been an ecstasy overdose, for instance, is that people may then start doing things that are completely out of character. So harming a family member, for instance, going crazy on the relatives. There have been horrible cases where people have perhaps attacked family members and then had no recollection of it afterwards.
Because they would see this thing, it looks like a colorful tablet, and they would think, okay, it's harmless, not knowing all of these things. So I'm glad that you're explaining that. And then quickly too, last week, the last episode, we spoke about the marijuana, but we didn't touch on edibles. So a couple of the young people were telling me that, well, eating the marijuana, not really smoking it, so it's not as harmful, or it doesn't have much of an effect. So what about edibles?
So that's really interesting. There's a few things with edibles. We know the edible foundation has taken off, right? So there's everything. There's brownies, there's gummies, there's popcorn. Absolutely. Again, looking really appealing and so on. And definitely as a teen, you'll want to try those things. So what we know is that eating marijuana compounds has a different effect from smoking it. Generally, it has to do with how full your stomach is, for instance, but overall, it seems to have a faster onset of action, and some people find that the duration of the effects lasts longer as well. The thing is that it can be tempting to have more than one. Right, especially if one of your side effects is you get the munchies or you feel evil.
People say it tastes good. They're like, this brownie tasting good, and they would take it, and they would say, well, I'm not feeling anything, and they would take another one, and then another one, and then bam, it hits them.
And it definitely then has a cumulative effect. And so we've definitely been seeing in the emergency department kids and young people trying this out. So when school was out, we'd have kids maybe taking products in and sharing. Remember that one of the things that schools have to look out for is that it is illegal to be marketing or be seen giving drugs out, any kind, including marijuana, anywhere where there's children and where schools are present, right? So again, it's back to teenagers trying out new things. And what I have found is that they'll often combine it with other things like alcohol. So the combination of alcohol and marijuana, again, has two powerful potent effects on the brain. And the other thing is that storing it is a key factor. So I've had experience with toddlers and little ones in the home. They look like gummies and sweets, right? And if you've ever seen kids eating gummies, I know of no kid that eats one gummy at a time. Right? They all take a handful and shove it in at once. And so we've had instances where we've had kids coming in with marijuana toxicity and poisoning because they've actually picked up edibles. In fact, we're seeing this more frequently over the last few months.
But because they're home now and the parents, we don't know.
It's more widely used.
It's there in the home, and they're looking for a snack, and they go in the fridge and they don't know that that's an edible, and they go and they eat it. And
absolutely.
Now it's
so it comes back to being, how we model behaviors and really being safe amongst.
So that brings me to the question: with what could parents and guardians do now, knowing all of this information that we just gave out today and in the last episode as well? How would you guide them?
So I'd say a few things. First is talk to your teen and talk to a young person. Often it is to do with a number of factors. It might be that there's peer pressure. It could be that they're trying to escape something, that they're trying to find ways to cope with stresses of life. Now, life is always going to have stresses, but we need to have healthy ways to adapt with those. The other is ask for help. So if you find that you are concerned about your teenager's behavior, or that your teen themselves comes to you and asks for help, there's lots of places that you can go to for further help. And I'm happy to share those numbers. One of the main organizations here is an organization called NADAP.
Right.
It is the National Drug and Alcohol Dependency Program, and they do a lot of support, information, and a lot of advice and support for people who are struggling to deal with drug addiction. And there are a number of other organizations that help. Speak to your doctor and your pediatrician as well, as they can often help support your young person as well, and get, if it is an issue around perhaps coming up with healthy coping strategies, there's always access to things like counselors and so on that we can use to assist. You're not alone.
And to the young people and the adolescents and the teens that are looking at us, I can tell you, we were all there. We weren't born big, we were there, and we know what you would be going through in terms of you would have friends at school who would tell you to try this and try that, and we will be curious as to what it is like. We could tell you it is not worth it in terms of you trying those things. Some of the drugs have different reactions with different people. You might be the one person, the one teen that tries this and gets a stroke, or you get a heart attack, or you never know how it would affect you in the long run. Especially in your teenage years or your adolescent years, that's when your mind is now developing. So it's not really the time for you to experiment and to try these things out. So as we may be sounding like a broken record and reminding you all, say no to drugs and all of these things, is because we know that at that age is very, very important for your learning and your development, and you don't want to affect your brain then, right? So take heed, take the warning, and parents and guardians, please be very, very careful and mindful with the brains of our teens. So thank you very much once again, Dr. Robertson, for joining us on the home front. Great information this week. And we are going to jump inside our mindfulness moment right here on home front. So breathe in the positivity, breathe out the negativity. Woosa.
Welcome to this mindfulness moment. They say gratitude turns what we have into enough. So I invite you to join me now, just closing your eyes, sitting up tall, just taking a moment to notice your own breath. Just bringing to mind something that you're grateful for in this moment. Think about why you're grateful for that thing or that person. Take a moment to notice what that gratitude feels like within your body. Despite everything that's happening around us, there's always something that we can be grateful for, even if it's just this breath. So remember, you can always have that sense of gratitude and be here now.
And we're back from our mindfulness moment, and we have Dr. Robertson on set. And before you leave, the last episode we spoke of a couple of the drugs. This episode we spoke of a couple others. Of all that we spoke about, which would you say would have the most adverse effects on the minds of the adolescents?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question, but when I say the two I really want to highlight are alcohol and vaping, because they are both quite easy to get hooked on, and they can have quite devastating long-term effects, because it's not always apparent just how addictive they can be. Yeah, special highlight for vaping on that one.
And then too, with the alcohol, it is so easily accessible. Every household, well, not every, but a lot of Trini households.
It's part of our culture.
Yes, part of our culture. Most celebrations, we would have a drink, and it would be there. So then if the parents are out and the children are home, you have it. So not every household may have marijuana in it, or lean in it, or any of those other drugs, but it's accessible. So we have to be careful in terms of the alcohol. And the vaping, because it's so cool. I mean, I could see why the teenagers, why the adolescents would be attracted to it, because of that whole coolness aspect. So now we're going to jump inside our questions and answers segment.
Hi Homefront, I am Aisha from Tunapuna. If someone takes the vaccine and after taking the vaccine you find out that you are pregnant, what are the effects it can have on the unborn child and even on the pregnant mother?
I am Dr. Shireen Kula. I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist, and the question is, what are the effects of the COVID-19 vaccine on the developing fetus and the pregnant mother? That is an excellent question. Now, there's limited but growing evidence about the safety of the COVID-19 vaccine during pregnancy, and experts feel that it is unlikely to pose any great risk at all in pregnancy. There's less experience in pregnancy with the AstraZeneca vaccine than with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, which have been around for a longer period of time, but there have been no reported concerns. Recent studies have shown that the messenger RNA vaccines are actually safe to the developing fetus, and in fact, it protects a pregnant woman from contracting any severe symptoms from the illnesses that may be caused from the COVID-19 virus. So if a first dose was given to a patient before she became pregnant or inadvertently became pregnant and did not know, then it is usually advised to wait for until after the 12th week of pregnancy to get a second dose. But please don't panic, don't worry. So far as the studies go, there are no ill effects such as abnormalities to the developing fetus. So for the maximum protection, go ahead and get your second dose, and this is protection to the mother for any illness she may get from the COVID-19 virus. It is your choice. It is an informed choice that you make with your obstetrician.
So keep sending those questions. Remember, there's never a stupid question, right? You have to, if you have a question, that means you don't know the answer, and we are going to get the professionals to answer all of your questions right here on Homefront. So send those questions, send those video questions in to the email address on your screen or to our Homefront Instagram page, and we're going to get someone to give you those answers. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Rom. This is Homefront, and we must say some special thank yous to the Heritage Inn Cascade for accommodating us for this episode, and also to the PED CARES Foundation. They support all of the pediatric units out there in Mount Hope. They partner with the local and the foreign organizations. They partner with the schools, and they give that support to our children. So you keep supporting them. They support the children. Thank you all very much. Catch you guys tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on TV6. Big fire, all right.